all that sort of thing. Looks like we're about to go in, so we're going to take a look at CGW versus Lucid. I didn't get a chance to scout out too many of the players just because, I was mostly filling time. But it should be interesting, so we'll sort of take a look at how this goes, and we're going to watch 2 rounds tonight. There will actually be 3 rounds played tonight, but the loser's bracket round 1 and the winner's bracket round 2 will overlap. So we're just going to go to winner's bracket round 2. Just because, there's only so many things that I can watch today. We might have a guest co-caster later tonight. I'm just going to do this one solo. I wasn't sure if, all the technical things would work out, and I don't usually want to put co-casters in if there's potential technical issues. So it looks like we're actually pretty smooth. It looks like everything's fine on my end. So for the next round, we'll probably have a co-caster. And then this weekend, Saturday's games and Sunday's games, I think almost all I will be dual casting, not solo casting. But, hopefully if you're here, you don't hate the sound of my voice too much, so it won't be the end of the world, even if I do end up doing some of the games myself. So we're about to go in, and again, we've talked about Captain's Mode before. Basically, it looks like we have CGW on the Dire side and Lucid on the Radiant side. So, actually, we're randomizing first pick. It looks like the Dire are going to have the first pick, so that's pretty smart. There's been a lot of criticism lately that there's some correlation between Radiant side, first pick, and a winning advantage. So it's generally perceived that Radiant has a statistically significant advantage and that first pick has a statistically significant advantage. So if you always, in your tournament structure, give the Radiant side first pick, you essentially give them a compounding advantage. So in some tournaments, maybe you want to randomize that up and give Dire team the first pick, or you want to make it so that teams can decide whether they want a side or whether they want first pick and they can't have both. So maybe if a team prefers the Dire side for whatever reason, then the other side would get first pick rather than them. So should be interesting to see what they go for. Let's take a look. Let's start going up into the draft and taking a look at what actually the team's picks and bans are. So for Dire, we've actually banned Darkseer and Batrider, and then Invoker and Nyx Assassin on Lucid side that they've banned out. So these are pretty standard bans. The one thing that's interesting is Invoker. This is maybe a team-specific ban. If you're in a tournament like this and your team particularly hates one hero, it's always smart to ban that hero out, even if it maybe isn't considered the most top-level competitive hero. If you don't want to see someone, or if it gets rid of your particular composition that you prefer, it's smart to use one of these bans for that. So 3 bans that are extremely typical early on. Batrider is essentially a lock for a ban at this point. He's just very, very strong. His win rate when he gets through is very high. And then Darkseer banned out, Nyx Assassin banned out. These are extremely typical first bans. I think Batrider and Nyx Assassin are generally considered possibly the 2 most powerful heroes in the game right now. It's interesting, the Dota buff ratings actually recently showed that at Diamond level, so at the highest level of matchmaking, Nyx Assassin is actually the most winning hero. So this is public games, but this is public games among the best players in the game. So Nyx Assassin very strong, and Batrider, of course, at the tip-top level, the professional level, it has a great win rate. So CGW picks up Undying, another very, very popular hero. He's seen a star dim a little bit recently, but still, Undying provides you a laning power that's extremely difficult to deal with. People generally have trouble laning against Undying just because he's got extremely strong laning capabilities in the form. He's got this heal on his soul rip or damage. He's got great damage and strength steal on the decay, so he's very survivable and can sort of gain that advantage there. And he's got the tombstone and flesh golem that are very strong for team fights later on in the game. So CGW already sort of getting their very strong team fight position ready, and actually so is Lucid. So you see these 2 teams, rather than sort of try to pick up utility, general utility heroes or carries, they're both going for team fight right off the bat. And so on CGW's side, they picked up Undying, Rubik, Magnus. This is pretty early to take a Rubik, but now that they see, essentially the dynamics of this draft was, you take Undying, then Lucid sees that, okay, they're building up teamfight heroes, they're getting their supports. They pick up Enigma and Jakiro. So Jakiro gives you quite a bit of teamfight. He gives you that decent laning presence with the Ice Path. He has a slow on his dual breath. He can push with Liquid Fire, and he's got his Macro Pyre for additional teamfight damage. And the Enigma, of course, is a teamfight specialist. He brings you Black Hole. This is a disable that goes through Black King Bar and Magic Immunity. And it just gives you great... he essentially frees up your lanes because he can jungle, he can solo side lane. And so they sort of pick up that. Now, as soon as you see the Enigma on the other team, one of the options that you have is to pick up something like a Rubik, because he can steal that Black Hole, he can turn that advantage right around. And Rubik is also considered a very strong support, so that's sort of maybe what the rationale was for CGW to respond to the Jakiro Enigma with an immediate pickup of a Rubik. Additionally, Magnus is also a very competitive teamfight hero. He brings a lot to the table similar to Enigma. The Black Hole and the Reverse Polarity are abilities that are essentially comparable in what they do for you. They both pierce through Magic Immunity. They're both an AoE disable. They're a long period stun, and so people, really like to leverage that, especially the Magnus, but also the Enigma is a very popular pick. So you can see that both teams sort of picked up their general utility teamfight heroes. What they haven't done is taken a mid or a carry. Neither team either, they have options that they can run in mid. So Magnus is fairly commonly run in the middle, so you could see Magnus in the middle for CGW. You could see something like the Beastmaster in the middle for Lucid. But at the very least, you can see that with this Queen of Pain ban, CGW think that Lucid actually don't have their mid hero yet. So they could run Beastmaster, but they're sort of taking away stronger options for them. And you can see that neither team has a primary carry. So none of these heroes are really considered primary carry heroes. Not the Beastmaster, not the Magnus, really. So both teams will sort of be looking to add a high farm hero to their pool. So it'll be interesting to see whether in these bans they actually decide to take out some of those high farm heroes to sort of... are we actually... we had 2 disconnects, so that's kind of unfortunate. I don't know if we're going to remake. Let's find out.
Radiant team banned.
All right. So you can see that now both teams are sort of taking out some of these carry options. So Luna considered very, very strong. Faceless Void considered strong. Both teams sort of thinking, okay, the other team wants to pick up a high farm hero. What do we think they want to add to their composition, and how can we reduce that? Now, Luna's a smart choice. She's got that cleave on her glaives that she picks up later on. So now that she's able to deal, if you disable the entire team with a Magnus, Luna can deal a colossal amount of damage to that packed up clump, both with her Eclipse ultimate and with the natural cleave on her glaive ability. So taking out the Luna is sort of Lucid thinking, okay, the ideal carry that they want to pair up with this Magnus might be a Luna, or it might be something like that. So we'll sort of take that out, ensure that they aren't actually able to pick that up. Once these bans end, CGW will actually have the 4th pick first. So if they wanted to take the Luna, if Lucid wanted to take the Luna, they would have to sort of bargain that CGW wouldn't take that with their 4th pick. I don't know what the deal was with the DCs, but I think we're drafting as normal, so maybe it's okay. So at any rate, what we're going to sort of see once these bans conclude is how these teams actually decide to fill out their compositions. So assuming that CGW actually are going to run the Magnus mid, they'll probably try to pick up a middle hero and a carry. And then this similar situation for Lucid, especially depending on what CGW actually take for their mid. There are certain heroes that Beastmaster is okay mid against, and certain heroes that he's not. So actually pick up a Disruptor. So 3 heroes that are generally considered in the general support role. What you can do is actually run Undying as a farmer. The only professional team that we actually see running the Undying as their carry is Empire. But, you know, if you're going to model your behavior against a professional team, Empire is certainly not a bad choice. They're considered one of the strongest teams in the Western scene. So if you, for instance, are running your Undying as your primary farmer in the center of a tri-lane or something, then you have more room to pick up 2 supports and a mid or something. Disruptor can also be run mid, especially if you're planning to run the Magnus as a side lane solo. They don't have a lot of great options for a side lane solo if they choose to run one, so certainly they could run the Magnus there and then run something like Disruptor mid. The team that does Disruptor mid is actually Team Liquid. They're pretty much the only team that runs that. And we do have the farming choice for Lucid, so you can see that they also took out a farmer in the form of this Naga Siren, just another hero I think that they don't want to see. And they pick up the Tiny. Oh, this is actually interesting. So for their carry, so CGW does pick one up, they pick up this Chaos Knight. They actually have a Phantom Lancer, so this is very, very interesting. We have essentially 2 heroes that are primarily used as farmers on Lucid's team. We've got both the Phantom Lancer and the Tiny. I think what we're likely to see is that this Tiny will actually be the more old school style of Tiny that we used to see, which is slightly less of a heavy farmer, more of a AoE disabler, ganker, teamfight type figure. So let's talk about Tiny a little bit. On these 2 abilities, Avalanche and Toss, Tiny deals a ton of magic damage. And actually, when used in concert, he deals even more. So what you can do is essentially, Tiny is sometimes run as a mid. He's a little flimsy to certain other mid compositions, but it's possible. But regardless of whether he's run mid or in a side lane, there's sort of 2 schools of thought. One is that you run him as more of an initiator role, where he sort of gets in, AoE studs, does as much magic damage as possible, and then you know what happens after that. And in that case, if they end up doing that, you usually see a build something like he goes the Arcane Boots, the Bottle for additional mana regen, and Blink. So Blink is very key on any sort of hero like that who wants to initiate, especially a melee hero. He's got to get in close, pop that Avalanche, pop that Toss, and then do what he can from there. Now, the other school of thought on Tiny, and this is sort of how he's been run in professional games ever since the International 2 in August of last year. The other route to play Tiny is the more hard carry route, which is you take something like Phase Boots, Drums, Yasha to get him as much speed as possible and get him going quickly around the map. And then you go Aghanim's Scepter. So Aghanim's Scepter gives Tiny this giant tree club, makes this attack passively cleave, and gives him a lot of building damage. And then as you add more and more items onto that after the Aghanim's Scepter, Tiny becomes more and more developed and eventually sort of snowballs and rolls over the entire opposing team. So difficult to deal with that if he sort of gets going, if he's able to get all those items. However, one interesting thing about Lucid's lineup is that they also have Phantom Lancer. So this is another hero who requires a very high amount of farm. I think most likely they're going to run Phantom Lancer as the primary farmer, and Tiny as maybe a number 2, a secondary farmer. I don't know how exactly they're going to... They could run Tiny mid. It might be a little vulnerable to some of the mid options that CGW could run, but it's also a possibility. Or they could run him in the side lane. They could run something like 1 in the middle with the Beastmaster and a side lane of 2. Although if the Enigma's jungling, I don't know, it'll be interesting to see how Lucid actually lanes. There's a number of possibilities that they could go with. There's a number of things that they could actually try, so we'll be interested to see what they actually do. Let's take a look at CGW's lineup. So on CGW's lineup, it's a little clearer who their primary farmer is. I'm actually not audible. That's too bad. Hang on. Let me check. One second. I'm just testing. Oh, okay. Yeah. Somebody was complaining that I wasn't audible actually in the game rather than in the stream. That's a good point. I totally forgot to change that setting because I don't usually get the caster slot in a game, but let me fix that. Let's fix that. Sorry about that, folks. Yeah, I mean, we're paused anyway, so it's not actually the end of the world if I do that. Alrighty. Okay. Okay. I think I should be audible now, so that might be better. Yes. I fixed it. Okay. Sorry about that, folks. I had to sort of resolve an issue with the thing. We're paused anyway, so it's actually not the end of the world. All right, so let's talk about CGW's lineup. So for CGW, their primary farmer is actually going to be this Chaos Knight. Now, Chaos Knight's an interesting choice. Certainly in the mid to late game, this Chaos Knight is going to have a lot of trouble actually matching the farm of the Phantom Lancer, and especially if the Phantom Lancer and the Tiny come online, it'll be very difficult for them. But Chaos Knight is an extremely dominant hero in the early to mid game. He does enormous damage. He's got this very strong stun. He's got the Reality Rift to sort of chase people down. And they have so much positioning and disable and teamfight capability that around when the Magnus hits 6 and the Chaos Knight picks up a couple of levels, it may indeed be very, very difficult for them to do, for Lucid to deal with CGW's teamfight lineup. But in terms of the general how the teams want the games to run, CGW is going to want to be aggressive right off the gate. You know, Lucid has 2 heroes who aren't going to be tremendously effective until they get a few levels up. So they've got this Phantom Lancer who really needs a lot of farm, hardcore agility carry, and they've got this Tiny. So CGW has heroes who, right off the gate, especially the Undying, especially the Rubik, have a lot of their effectiveness. This Disable on Rubik, this Telekinesis, is actually incredibly strong at level 1. And Disruptor, you know, once he picks up just a few levels, enough to get the Thunderstrike, enough to get 1 or 2 ranks in Glimpse, it becomes very, very difficult for Lucid to actually deal with the things that CGW are going to be putting out earlier in the game. So you can see that they're actually currently sending their 4 heroes right up into the jungle. I actually love you can sort of see them drawing on the map here. CGW wants to get a first blood. They're going to go into the jungle here. They might catch out Jakiro. Meanwhile, Lucid are trying to do the same thing with 3 heroes up against Undying up here. But I think CGW are going to have more success. So Jakiro's actually lifted up. They've got the static field up. He's actually out of it, but they're going to stun him. Actually, really good ice path there. Will he actually escape from this? It seems unlikely. They don't have the stun from the Chaos Knight. Beastmaster throws out some wild axes, but Jakiro goes down, so they're going to pick up the first blood. Right on the Magnus, that'll be useful, especially if they end up running him mid. And that's a strong start for CGW. Meanwhile, Lucid are unable to find anybody up in the jungle here. Undying smartly, you can see no ribs. It's a good name for an Undying player, but you can see that he sort of started out by hiding up here and being a little bit safer than the Jakiro was. Additionally, they are locking down the jungle here. They've got the Magic Bush rune here that blocks off these 2 camps, and they've got a ward here. Sorry, not the rune, a ward. They've got a double damage rune here. So they got a ward here. So they're essentially blocking all 3 of these camps, which is going to make it much more difficult for this Enigma to actually be able to jungle. So basically in terms of the lanes, they're putting the Undying in the solo safe, so this will get Undying the levels that he wants, and it'll, you know, get him developed quite quickly. Who's he actually up against? He's up against Tiny, so this is a one-on-one lane, quite interesting, between an Undying and a Tiny. Now, Tiny is going to be having conniptions from the fact that Undying can just spam Decay on him, but if Tiny is actually able to get his levels, he might be able to just combo Undying down in a few levels. So that'll be an interesting matchup. Meanwhile, on the bottom, we have a Tri-Lane versus Tri-Lane. So what we have is an aggressive Tri-Lane in the form of this Rubik Disruptor Chaos Knight. And if you're going up against a team that needs a lot of farm, and you have a team that's fairly strong early, a setup like this is actually very, very useful for you. So if you want to, you can run this aggressive Tri-Lane where, you know, the Enigma, Phantom Lancer, Jakiro is quite potentially weak against your lineup. Like you can, if you can chain disables, like get the Chaos Knight stun and the Disruptor spells and the Rubik Lift onto a hero, they're going to have a lot of trouble dealing with that. Now, the fact that these two ranged heroes are actually here, this is interesting. So I think once they saw that the amount of lockdown in the jungle that CGW were deploying, I think Lucid decided to actually run the Enigma as part of a trial, which is extremely unusual in terms of what you actually want to do with an Enigma. But on the other hand, it's going to be fairly nice just in terms of having additional range damage, additional harassment, and protecting this Phantom Lancer. But this is fairly difficult too. Like, this Enigma is going to be way underdeveloped. When you take an Enigma, you really want him to be developed as early as possible. You really want him to get that early soul ring, even get a mechanism if he's going to be the mechanism carrier for a team, and get a lot of early levels. Because Enigma at level 1, all he brings to the table is this level 1 Malefice, if that's what you got, or level 1 Eidolons. You really want him to about, I mean, you want to hit 6, so any hero with a big team fight ability, you really want to hit 6 with him so you can get that black hole up. But you really also want to get rank 4 Malefice. Malefice is one of those rare abilities that is semi-useful up to rank 4, and then the rank 4 is incredibly high consequence. So, and the reason is you can look at this instances thing right here. Basically, at level 4, Malefice gets its third instance. So instead of 2 stuns separated by a unit of time, it actually goes up to 3 stuns. So that's very, very useful. And so I think so far this trial lane is doing its work. They haven't actually gotten any kills in this offensive trial lane. What they are doing is denying this Enigma tremendously. And there's a stun going out from the Jakiro Nice Path, but this might not be enough to save the Enigma. Good Reality Rift from Stalagmites here. And he gets the second kill, so that's a kill up on the Chaos Knight. Actually, the Disruptor gets the kill, but that's 2 assists up on the Chaos Knight. He's got quite a bit more farm. They actually have more farm in every lane. You can see that this Tiny is being substantially denied in this lane. The Undying, like I said, we expected the Decay to do quite a bit. He actually cops a ton of damage from the tower there. But you can see the combination of this Tombstone and his natural Decay. Decay is just so strong. If you're on one-on-one in a strength hero of a strength hero lane, you can see he's just stealing tons of strength from the Tiny. And Undying's abilities at early levels are just far more spammable than Tiny's. His abilities cost 120 and 120 mana respectively. Whereas Undying's cost, you know, his primary nuke that he's going to be using against Tiny that steals his strength is only 70 mana. And he can pair that up with a 50 mana Soul Rip. And if he really wants to kill, he can add the Tombstone onto that. So we can see that the Undying is really quite dominant in this lane. Additionally, in mid, we again have this problem where Beastmaster isn't that necessarily unfavored against Magnus, but you can see that Magnus actually has a bottle and Beastmaster doesn't, which means that Magnus is going to get the regen he needs to continue spamming out this Shockwave and harassing this Beastmaster. And you can see the upshot of that is this Beastmaster only has 8 last hits, the Magnus has 18. So CGW definitely seizing an early lead. They are winning the tri lane handily. You can see that the primary farmer, this Phantom Lancer, is not really able to get mesh in the way of last hits at all. He's 1-1, whereas with the Chaos Knight on the Dire side is actually up to 15 last hits. So definitely difficult to deal with if you're Lucid. But I think they still have a shot. The main thing that they need to do, I think, at this point, is they need to counter-ward these wards. And I think, is this just out of range? That would be unfortunate. Oh, I actually don't have options to look at that. That's too bad. They really, really want to clear out these wards if they possibly can, because they really want to get this Enigma in the jungle. He's not doing that great of a job of protecting the Phantom Lancer yet, because as you can see, the Phantom Lancer is getting the actual farm. And a Reality Rift goes out, they're going to put up the static fuel. He's not going to be able to escape from this, I think. Rubik, if he shots at one more thing. Yeah, and that's another kill on the Enigma. And that's really, really tough. If you're an Enigma and you're only at level 2, at about 4 minutes, that's much worse than you would have gotten if you were able to farm the jungle. I think they probably had to anticipate that they were going to get this competitively warded and try to clear it out right from level 1. Magnus, meanwhile, comes in with a haste rune. He's actually level 4, which is not quite high enough to have his ultimate or anything. But will he take down this Phantom Lancer? I think it looks like he might if he actually deploys the Skewer. Phantom Lancer quite low. He's going to go for the Skewer. He actually does land it, and he's able to kill him just under the tower. Actually, Jakiro's in quite a lot of trouble, too. Beastmaster comes in to try to help, but he's low on HP. Another great Ice Path. These Ice Paths have been very strong from Lox here. But unfortunately, the Magnus is just enough to get him. So that's 3 kills up on the Magnus. That is a ton of development this early. Meanwhile, Beastmaster is on the run down here. I think those 2 kills went to the Magnus and the first blood went to the Magnus. So again, he's gotten quite a bit of advantage. He's actually up to 1922. He doesn't have any boots, but he could, at this point, he could just skip the boots and pick up his Blink, which will be devastating. Magnus is going to be the first to hit 6. Actually, Undying is 6-2. But just in general, I think CGW are seizing an advantage in each of these lanes. This tri-lane with Enigma is it's very, very tough to manage an Enigma tri-lane, just because until he gets those levels, his effectiveness is going to be quite low in some respects. So unfortunately, their other problem is, despite planting 2 counter wards, 2 of these sentry wards, they weren't actually able to spot out either of the observer wards, which meant that the entire jungle is actually on lockdown. So they're not able to take the Enigma out in the jungle unless they just farm these 2 camps, which I think actually in retrospect maybe they should have farmed the 2 camps. Phantom Lancer, meanwhile, he's getting he's keeping parity with levels in terms of onto the Chaos Knight, but he's not really carrying his team in the way that you'd want. Let's take a look at the top lane again. So in the top lane, Tiny has up to 5 last hits. Again, he's sort of massively underdeveloped relative to this Undying. It's interesting that in this game, neither team has really gone for the early boots. They just have a few early boots, but a lot of these teams have sort of... The players in this game have decided that they really want to counteract exactly what the opponent's doing in ways that don't involve picking up an early boots. Like, they don't really want the maneuverability as much as they want sustain in the lane. So you can see Undying's actually taken a Naked Cloak before boots. What he's doing here is trying to limit the damage that he takes from the Avalanche Toss combo. So Tiny early on, until he gets a lot of development, is pretty much only going to deal magic damage. The only thing you have to fear from him is the combo of Avalanche and Toss that's going to deal a ton of magic damage out to you. And what this Undying did here is he went for the immediate Cloak, which reduces damage you take essentially by 15% from that magic. So that makes him much more sustainable, and he's dealing a lot of magic damage as well. And then gets kind of another great Ice Path. The Ice Path is rushing 3 or 4 people at each time, but Phantom Lancer's in a lot of trouble now. He's trapped inside of the static field. He gets pulled back by the Reality Rift. He might take the last tick of damage. He does. He takes it down for a Disruptor. So 7-0 on the board. CGW definitely seizing it. It's got to be about 5k, 6k? Yeah, about 5k. So about a 5k gold differential already, which is very, very difficult to conquer at about 7 minutes. Definitely if you're... And actually Magnus does end up going the Blink Dagger. Did he go before boots? He went up before boots. So if you manage to save up this much money early, this is actually not a bad idea. You definitely want your tier 1 boots at the same time, but an early blink gives you such a dramatic maneuverability advantage relative to the other team, just especially if you're Magnus. If you're Magnus, your main thing is landing this reverse polarity. Any fight you land reverse polarity in, especially early, is a fight in which your team is substantially favored. So if he's able to land it, if he's able to get in position with a blink, it hardly matters that he can't follow up by walking really fast, because he's already in there. He's already, you know, in there and hype, as it were. And I think at this point he sees a substantial advantage in the middle as well. As far as their heroes go, Atlas here on the Beastmaster is actually doing quite well. Like, he's got 6 to 18 last hits, which is more than double the next of his team. But putting farm on a Beastmaster, it's good. It's definitely something you want. He can do something like get a fairly early Aghanim's, which is an extremely good item on Beastmaster. But you certainly want more on your Phantom Lancer, because really without a decent amount of item development, this Phantom Lancer is not going to be that useful. And you can see he's still level 4 because he picked up a death there. And so when we look at the level board, he's already falling quite a bit behind. This tri-lane is full of level 5 heroes. Their Beastmaster and Tiny are doing well in terms of amassing levels, but you've already got this Magnus at level 8. This is, as soon as this Magnus hits level 11, if he hits it ahead of the pack, that's something that Lucid are going to have to really figure out a way to deal with. So let's take a look at what everybody's building. So Undying actually done with his Arcane Boots. This will give him even more sustainability and even more advantage in this lane. The fact that he has 41 last hits to... oh, actually, we pick up a kill on Rubik. That's my mistake for missing that. I think Rubik just sort of got out of position right around here where the rest of his team, you could see, are in this sort of area. But they've got the Magnus, and I don't know if this ward... Actually, this probably saw the Magnus, but if it didn't, then they have to be very, very, very careful about this Magnus running in. If he can disable 2 or 3 of their heroes, it's going to be tough for them. I don't think Enigma's 6 yet either. Enigma, to counteract that Magnus reverse polarity, this Enigma really wants Black Hole. And Beastmaster gets caught out of position here, and that's another kill on Magnus. He's got this double damage room. He can actually freely chase down this Jakiro or maybe somebody else. So what I was going to say about the top lane is that Tiny, when he doesn't have Arcane Boots, versus an Undying that does, they actually pull him back. So this Disruption goes out. They are going to hit him a couple times. They might not need the reverse polarity for this either. They do get a stun, but the Disruptor gets the last hit. So three kills for Fish Noodle Soup. He's actually has a 7 out of 19 fight participation. 4-second stun on Enigma. That's going to come out a lot of damage from Chaos Knight. Just enough with the Reality Rift to actually take him down. And they can still chase right under the tower here, I think. They've got 4 against 1. They choose not to. They're going to actually clear out the lane here. Does Phantom Lancer have a port? He actually doesn't, so if they are able to find this Phantom Lancer, this might be the nail in the coffin just in terms of completely delaying his development. But Undying, now that he has this repeatable source of renewable mana, is going to dominate this Tiny even more because he's just able to cast Decay so many more times than Tiny is able to cast his spells. Do they find the Phantom Lancer? No, they actually don't? Oh, no, he's still hiding out here. They might pick up this tier 1 tower with time. They have to wait for the next creep wave probably, but this Phantom Lancer, which he actually throws out a lance. That's extremely bold. He almost kills him, but he's going to pay for that with his life. He just gets caught out just a little bit. Maybe overly optimistic to throw that out. And the Magnus is way the hell in there. He doesn't have mana to actually cast his Reverse Polarity. He does skewer back, so the Beastmaster gets massively mispositioned, but they might not deal the rest of the damage. This Magnus is game with 13 health points. Really, really bold play from him there. And they've got the static field going out on Jakiro. Jakiro probably won't... Yeah, they have to retreat. Too much damage going on in the Magnus. He has no mana to actually do anything. He is holding 2 Clarities, which I think somebody passed to him. But he's definitely going to have to go back. I can't imagine you feeling too confident when you have 13 HP getting away from a fight.
Radiant's middle tower is under attack.
Oh, and the fight actually continues. They put up another static... This kinetic field is doing a lot of work for them, but a great ice path from Jakira again. I think you have to say that at this point, the only player even having any semblance of keeping Lucid in this game is this Locks on Jakira here, because these ice paths, even at level 1, even though he's level 3, each ice path has landed critically to actually help his heroes survive for just that little bit of time to, you know, keep something from turning into a total rout. Unfortunately, they're still down 11-1. So they're going to have to find a solution that doesn't involve having this sort of 3 protect 1 carry up here. So this Phantom Lancer might finally start getting last hits as a result of being protected by this many heroes, but the downside is he's not going to get the levels he needs. So this Undying is going to seize a dramatic advantage. He's up to 52 last hits. And Magnus comes up here to kill Tiny. Oh, great stun, actually, but it might not be quite enough. He gets blocked by his own creeps. He does pop Magic Stick, and it's just enough with the craggy exterior. He gets picked up by the Decay just under the tower, but the craggy exterior saved him for just a little bit more by preventing the Magnus from being able to kill him. Huge craggy exterior random proc there. I don't think we ever actually talked about this ability on this stream, but basically, Tiny, his passive ability gives him a chance to stun attackers in a low range, so mostly melees on certain very close ranged characters. But it deals a tiny bit of damage, but more importantly, it has a chance to stun. This actually makes Tiny a little bit better against hard carries than you might think, just because if you're an anti-mage and you're beating on a Tiny, if there's a 24% chance to proc a stun and your attack speed is very high, you're going to be stunned a substantial portion of the time. Beastmaster actually uses his ultimate just to sort of protect himself onto the tower with his Magnus. He pops up his beasts, but he's still taking a ton of damage, and the skewer kills him. Really good skewer here from Magnus. Tiny trying to chase him down, but I think with tier 1 boots, it's going to be very difficult to actually find him. Yeah, he doesn't have quite enough speed, especially with the Blink. Magnus is going to have no triple escape in this. It would take a godly ice path. Actually, at this point, not even that. So, Magnus picks up the kill on Beastmaster and manages to escape with his life. Let's look at what this mid-matchup actually ended up boiling down to. Last hits aren't so different, only about 14 last hit advantage, but the general farm difference, you gotta see that the XP per minute, the gold per minute for Magnus is the highest on this team, and that's great. You actually, as far as teamfight heroes go, you really want that. Huge static store from the Disruptor, silencing the Tiny. Silence Tiny at this level is just so difficult to actually do anything with, and enough damage to take him down with a Disruptor as well. Huge Lance from his Phantom Lancer, not quite enough to kill Rubik. He just doesn't have that. He doesn't have the levels. He doesn't even have level 4 Lance yet. Huge skewer from the Magnus as well, and more damage going out. Rubik cops a kill just from the Wild Axes getting thrown out from the Beastmaster, but it's still not enough to prevent. I think this tier 1 tower is down now. This rune control for Magnus has been really immaculate. Every time he gets a haste rune like this, it's just incredibly difficult for Lucid to actually deal with it, because he has so much more maneuverability than their entire team, and he's still got Blink Dagger if he wants to chase this guy down. Actually, the skewer is enough for it, and he blinks away, gets out from the Enigma. If that Malefice had landed, perhaps they'd be able to bring him down. So they push through the tier 1 tower, and I think we're going to see CGW trying to seal up this game at this point. Because like we said, they're up against a team that if they get a ton of farm, Disruptor playing very loose there. He might actually cop a kill from the tower. Okay, he does manage to get away from it. 22 HP there. That would be kind of embarrassing to be that far ahead and then die in the way that he almost died there, but Undying has actually rotated, so Undying has finally come bottom. I think CGW are looking to apply the death blow, because again, you don't want to let up against a team that has 2 big core farmers in the form of Phantom Lancer and Tiny. These guys are so behind now. All we've got is a Bracer on the Tiny, eventually going to be built towards the drums. He doesn't have his tier 2 boots. And then on Phantom Lancer, we have the Tranquils. This is pretty standard, but he's not even really up to whatever his next item is. What is he building with a Regen and a Sage's Mask? Oh yeah, he's making Soul Ring, but it's a little late for the Soul Ring, honestly. Chaos Knight cops a lot of damage, but will there actually be enough to take him down? Without rank 4 Malefice, I don't think there will be. They do take down Undying, so Undying cops his first death of the game. He's well on the way to, I think he's making, he either is going to go straight for a Hood, or he might make a Vanguard. 4-second stun on the Beastmaster. This might be enough for Chaos Knight to take him down. And Magnus actually picks up a kill in the top on Jakiro as well. But I'm more interested in here, where this Chaos Knight is at very low health, but with this Undying Tombstone, they might actually get another kill on the Tiny. Tiny actually gets a pick off there. Will Rubik actually? No, not quite. Really good Magic Stick activation, but not quite enough. He takes him down with the last final hit. So Rubik picking up a kill and an assist there, getting himself a little bit of development. He is about half of his team's deaths, but now he's, you know, he is the number 5 role. He's doing the pure warding, and he does manage to pick up a kill. Meanwhile, this Disruptor, he's got his Arcane Boots. They're stacking Arcane Boots, which is smart. They have a lot of very mana-intensive heroes. They've got the Rubik, who uses a lot of mana. They've got the Undying that uses a lot of mana, and they've got the Disruptor. And honestly, Chaos Knight has a pretty small mana pool and things that he wants to do with it. You can see he's got his drums that he's building towards his Armlet here. Armlet will be very useful as soon as he's sort of level 8. So Chaos Knight is about to pick up his first rank of Phantasm, his ultimate, and Armlet is really ideally timed with when you start picking up your ultimate. Before that, it's good, but it's really good once you actually that Disruption hurts them more than helps them, but they are going to have the kinetic field. They're going to be able to keep Beastmaster there, as well as pick up the tower. So continuing to compound their advantage, I think probably this is past the point where Lucid could do anything about it. Mainly the issue is this early pick of the Enigma CGW were really, really ready for the Enigma, I feel like. They immediately knew we're going to charge their jungle. If there's anybody there, we'll kill them. Then we'll counter-ward their entire jungle, and then the Enigma won't really have a place to go. And that's exactly what really happened. Enigma actually copying a death there as well. He's just too low level at this point to actually stand up to the fight that's going to come out from these heroes. I think CGW are going to look to apply the final bit of pressure here. They definitely could advance to the Raxes if they wanted. I think they do want. Phantom Lancer, meanwhile, you know, just trying to get that last bit of farm, trying to get to the point where he can actually contest some of these fights. But as soon as the Raxes start going down, it's going to be more and more difficult for Lucid to actually be... When you lose a Rax this early, like at 16 minutes, that's an entire lane which the creeps are giving you less gold per hit, they're giving you less XP. You really have to worry about keeping that lane in place for the entire rest of the game, and it's just very difficult to deal with. Chaos Knight copying a lot of damage, but not before getting another kill on Beastmaster. Taking a lot of tower hits, but I think they're just healthy enough that they don't really have that much of an issue. Tidy almost kills Rubik, but he actually escapes. Big Static Storm, no kinetic field, and that's still enough to fully silence. They've got so much disable on this team in the form of the Magnus, the Chaos Knight, the Disruptor, the Rubik, that sometimes they don't even need the kinetic field from the Disruptor to ensure that somebody stays in place. They can just chain together their stuns. And almost a full team wipe there for Lucid in response to just the Rubik from CGW. And this might be enough for them to apply the last bit of pressure. They actually, interestingly, this is the only lane that they actually can get the Rax in. Note that the Tier 1 and Tier 2 towers are still up on the top, and the Tier 2 tower is still up for Lucid on the bottom. If the prior tower is up, you actually cannot deal... Wow, they really want that hut. The hut is actually denied, so that wasn't worth it. And actually a Black Hole finally coming out from Enigma as he hits level 6. Enough for 3 kills, it looks like. 4 seconds stun on the Enigma. Will the Chaos Knight actually be able to get away? Big hit from Magnus there with the Shockwave. But he gets stunned. Excellent Ice Path once again. Will it be enough? With the Wild Axes, it just might be. They do actually pick up 3 kills there. 3 kills, not a great trade for a pair of racks, but it's very good. And one of those Rift doesn't cancel Black Hole. No, it actually doesn't. It's repositions don't cancel channels. It's the same thing with Force Staff. If you Force Staff and Enigma is Black Holing, it won't. Providing a little bit of knowledge up in this chat here. So Phantom Lancer actually going over the middle, and that gives Lucid a little bit of breathing room. Those are really the first kills. Whoa, Phantom Lancer, you gotta be careful, bro. You're taking a ton of damage. Uh-oh, if he goes down to the creeps... Oh my goodness, is he blocked? Okay, alright, okay, we're okay. I was really worried that he was gonna be fully creep blocked there. That would have been... I don't know of a nice way to put what that would have been, so I won't say anything. Oh, but a huge skewer. Magnus, again, with this repositioning on the Blink Dagger, he can do so many annoying things, like just pick 2 kills out of the air there. We're like towards the safe portion of their river, but because Magnus has the maneuverability of that early Blink Dagger, and, you know, 5k gold on top of that, it's just so difficult for Lucid to find any breathing room at all. That was like their one opportunity to finally get some uncontested farm on the Phantom Lancer, and he immediately goes down. He's still stuck with just this Soul Ring and the Tranquil Boots. It'll be interesting to see what this Magnus actually picks up with this 5,000 gold. He could almost go straight Refresher, and that's going to be very, very difficult to deal with. Once you have the 2 ultimates on something that's already such a strong ultimate in and of itself, it's just... And he's almost level 16 as well. Let's take a look at the level graph really quick. Yeah, we got this Magnus really peeling ahead of the pack. This is the great thing. If you have a mid Magnus who has a good time, like he has a pretty easy lane, like Beastmaster isn't going to contest probably like killing Magnus. At best, he'll trade with him, and that's really what he did. He didn't lose by that much, but he didn't really win either. If you get your Magnus a bunch of farm and he's able to get around and get some ganks early, Magnus is actually fit. Like the earlier getting levels on this guy is fantastic. He's able to give somebody 50% bonus damage in cleave, which is great for, you know, your Chaos Knights of the world. He's able to get the additional ranks of Reverse Polarity, which doubles its damage when you hit rank 3, in addition to being just a much longer duration stun. Big Roar coming out here. They might try to pick off this Undying. He actually somebody almost gets glimpsed, but a good stun again from Jakira and the Macro Power. Undying taking a ton of damage, allowing the Beastmaster to hit him while inside of the kinetic field, which I think is kind of questionable. But he's able to just survive for so long. And these Tombstone, there are a lot of Tombstone creeps up. They do pick up the Undying, but they really need to get this Tombstone down before these creeps just overwhelm them. Phantom Lancer doing his best. There's an interesting interaction between Phantom Lancer on one team and Undying on the other team, in the sense that Phantom Lancer can spawn all these illusions, but then Undying spawns a zombie for every illusion. So once the illusions get very strong, he completely counters the Undying. But before the illusions are strong at all, the Undying actually almost counters him. So it looks like we're about to wrap up soon, because they're taking down these towers. They're going to be able to pierce through the tier 3s, get the last couple of Raxes, and that'll be the end of this game. I think CGW will actually pick up their first win in the winner's bracket. Then you have Lucid will go down to the loser's bracket, so they'll be playing next in their loser's bracket round 1 match. And I think we'll probably go on from that. I don't want to overcall a game, but there is a substantial advantage. We're over 20,000 gold, and you've got 2 heroes who really... even this tiny, even if you're playing him as a ganker tiny with primarily magic damage, you need something like Arcane Boots, or you need something like Blink. When the other team's initiator has a Blink and he can just take you down at his leisure, you really need a Blink to be able to counteract that, and they're not going to be able to do that. So Magnus actually ends up going with Dagon, so I guess this is just that they already won, they don't really worry about it, they just want to pop people quickly. If you have a huge level advantage, Dagon's actually surprisingly effective at it. Huge static field from that Disruptor with the talents. Oh, and they trap. Excellent combo there. They have this AoE silence and damage area, but people can walk out of it as soon as the kinetic field goes down. But as soon as the kinetic field almost goes down, you see Tiff and Co. on CGW actually popping his reverse polarity to make sure that they stay within that silence for the entire duration of it. And that's, 5 seconds of taking up to 170 damage per second is enough to kill almost anybody, especially an underlevel player. They do actually get a pick off on Chaos Knight here, but in exchange for 3, this is really a trade that I think they're willing to take at this point. They've got so much, if you look at the net worth, you've got 4 players on CGW of higher net worth than the first player on Radiant, so on Lucid, so it's almost impossible for Lucid to actually do anything to sort of stop getting Constricted at this point. They can lose heroes like the Chaos Knight and they really don't care. What is actually doing? Necrobook? Yeah, at this point I think they're just building whatever items they want. So the Necrobook, not generally a highly loved item on Chaos Knight, but it's got various nice things. One nice thing is at level 3 Necronomicon, your Necronomicon creeps actually gain True Sight, so you can... Oh, actually big black hole there, but immediate stun from the Rubik. He stole the Ice Path. It was extremely useful there. I actually thought he was caught in it, but he wasn't. Magnus continuing to just deal damage. At this point, the Magnus is so beastly that they can just get tons of kills just on the back of him. Just with this Dagon is enough to blow up almost anybody. It does 600 burst damage. Let's go look at the health of these guys. So Beastmaster's pretty beefy, but 600 damage is 2/3 of Jakira's life. It's a substantial chunk of anybody on Lucid. I think we're heading for a GG here in just a moment. They're just getting their money's worth out of the game, which I don't have any problem with. Wow, I didn't actually see what the Magnus' score was, but he's 18-0, so almost half of their kills accounted for by primarily the damage of Magnus, and then an additional 7 assists on that. That's a crazy 18-0-7. Really a tale of Magnus is just such a ridiculously strong hero. I mean, once you pick up Dagon, you're just gonna get free kills all the time. He actually just leveled up his Dagon to level 5, so once that gets delivered, he will be able to do about 90% of Jakira's health pool in one shot with just the Dagon, which is pretty difficult to deal with if you're a team standing up against that. But at any rate, so basically, let me talk. I don't want to give this team as the short shrift, but this game's basically over. So I want to talk about the schedule for the rest of the weekend. So I'm going to commentate one more round tonight, which is going to be the winner's bracket round 2. So I don't know if I'm going to stick with CGW or if I'm going to switch, take a look at a different team. I think like early on in the tournament, I want to sort of get a scope of what the different teams do. So I most likely will not look at CGW again until they make it further in the tournament. But so tonight there'll be 2 rounds. So there are a couple other people casting this. You can check out the link that I linked up in the stream chat to actually see what the other streams are. People may be casting something in the losers bracket. So that starts at 9:30. Eastern, so that'll be 8:30 Central or 6:30 Pacific. That's going to be about 45 minutes is when that round will start. I will actually not be casting until 10 Eastern, which is 9 Central, so in about an hour and 15 minutes, because that'll be the winner's bracket round 2, and we'll take a look at another game at that point. So that'll be the last game for tonight. It's going to resume on Saturday, and then we're going to have the final few games on Sunday. Again, you can take a look at the link for the actual details of what's going to happen, but Saturday, I think, will mostly be, working through to the finals. In terms of the actual schedule, I will not be casting for all of Saturday because it's going to go pretty much all day. But I'll probably be casting later on in the afternoon, so something around 4 p.m. Central, 5 p.m. Eastern. Huge reverse polarity coming out here, actually. But basically what's going to happen is the games will start at 12 Central, so 1 Eastern, 10 Pacific on Saturday. And then they'll actually go all the way up to 10 Central, so 8 Pacific, 11 Eastern will be the last game that starts on Saturday. It's a long day tomorrow. Actually, an offensive GG. Don't do this. Don't say GG if you're the winning team. Say GG if you're the losing team. That's not how this works. But they are winning, but don't do this. At any rate, so they do actually. Lucid does call GG, so that's going to be the end of the game. So not that close of a game, but there wasn't really any seeding for this tournament. Sometimes you end up with somewhat imbalanced formats, and I think Lucid just got a little bit outdrafted. Maybe they took the Enigma a little earlier than they may have been fully comfortable with, just in terms of if you take an Enigma very early, the other team can do a lot of working around that. So you saw, sort of in response to the Enigma, there was a lot of work that CGW did to make sure that they could counteract that in any given way. They picked up a lot of stuns. They picked up the Magnus with the stun that goes through BKB, and they sort of just they knew that they were going to go an aggressive tri-lane to really overwhelm any sort of tri-lane that Lucid could pull up in their defense. So an interesting round 1 game. Sort of talked about the schedule already. We're gonna resume in about an hour. I'm gonna put the stream on standby for just a little bit. I will probably not. I will have Dota up. Like I won't have the placeholder screen. But basically, we're gonna resume at around 9 as soon as this game ends. We're just gonna take a look at the stats screen because it'll be interesting to see just the final stats of this Magnus. They're actually picking up mass Necrobook at this point, which is kind of fun. You can send these Necrobook if you want to be a big, not very nice person. You can send the Necrobook units to tank some of the damage from the fountain, which lets you run your actual players into the fountain. This might be Magnus's death, actually. Overconfident there, picking up a death. It's much more unsightly to have 1 death on your score screen than 2 deaths. Alright, and thanks for watching. We'll probably resume in about an hour to watch the Winners Bracket Round 2, and then that'll be the last game of the day. We'll resume on Saturday. Just note the Winners Bracket Final is at 4 Central, 2 Pacific, 5 Eastern on Saturday, and that one we will definitely cover because that should be interesting. And then Sunday will be the Loser Bracket Final and the Grand Final. And so the Winners Bracket Final, the Loser Bracket Final, and the Grand Final are best of 3, and best of 5 respectively. Every other round will be best of 1, sort of like this. Thanks for watching. We'll resume in just a bit. And yeah, so CGW sort of seizing that early win, getting the Magnus just completely balling out of control, as it were, getting the 21-1. Very strong start for them. I think they'll be happy to advance to the second round in the Winners Bracket. And Lucid, not out yet. They will be going to the Losers Bracket Round 1, so that's in about 45 minutes. And wish both teams all the best. And hope you will watch. You'll be back in about an hour to watch the Round 2 with me. Thanks.